Mom told me, we just can't support everyone equally. I nodded, left, and built something they could never touch. At graduation, she cried when she saw the name on the banner. I'm 28 now, the oldest of 4 kids. My siblings are Jessica, 26, Marcus, 24, and little Emma, 18, just graduated. My parents, Linda and Robert, have always been selective about their support. And by selective, I mean they had their golden children and their afterthoughts. Growing up in suburban Ohio, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. Dad worked as a regional manager at a manufacturing company, Mom was a part-time real estate agent. We lived in a nice neighborhood, had decent cars, went on family vacations. But if you looked closer, you'd see the cracks. Jessica was the academic star. Straight A's, valedictorian, accepted to Northwestern on partial scholarship. Marcus was the athlete. Star quarterback, full ride to Ohio State. Emma was the baby, the artistic one, always got away with everything because she was sensitive and creative. And then there was me, Sarah. I was fine. B+ average, played JV soccer, participated in drama club. Not exceptional enough to warrant the spotlight, but not struggling enough to need extra attention. I was the responsible one, the one who helped with groceries, who babysat Emma when Mom had showings, who never complained. The first real sign of things to come happened when I was 16. Jessica was applying to colleges, and I watched my parents drain their savings to pay for SAT prep courses, college application fees, and visits to prospective schools. When I mentioned wanting to take the same SAT prep course the following year, Mom looked at me like I'd asked for a pony. Sarah, sweetie, she said, using that tone that always made my stomach drop, you know we can't do everything for everyone. Jessica's scores could get her into Ivy League schools. You'll do fine with some studying on your own. I did fine. I studied on my own, worked part-time at a local coffee shop to pay for my own SAT fees, and got accepted to Ohio University with a partial academic scholarship. Not Northwestern, but decent. When I told my parents, Dad patted my shoulder and said, "Good job, kiddo. See? You didn't need all that expensive help after all." College was where things really started to diverge. Jessica got a monthly allowance from Mom and Dad to help with expenses. When I asked about the same support, I was told the family budget was tighter now, and since I had a job, I should be able to manage. Meanwhile, Marcus's football gear, training camps, and recruiting visits were all enthusiastically funded. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, took out student loans, and lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I called home every Sunday, listened to updates about Jessica's internships and Marcus's game statistics, and shared my own small victories to polite but distracted responses. The breaking point came during my junior year. I had been accepted to a competitive summer internship program at a tech startup in Columbus. It was unpaid, but it would have been an incredible experience in my field, communications and digital marketing. The only problem was I couldn't afford to take 3 months off from my paying job. I called Mom, excited and nervous, explaining the opportunity and asking if there was any way they could help with living expenses for the summer. The conversation started well enough. "Oh, that sounds wonderful, honey. You're really making something of yourself." "Thanks, Mom. I know it's a lot to ask, but this could really open doors for me. I've already calculated it out. I need about $1,500 to cover rent and groceries for the 3 months. The silence stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Sarah," she finally said, her voice taking on that familiar careful tone, "you know we're already stretched thin. Jessica's summer program at that think tank in DC requires housing costs, and Marcus needs money for his training camp. We just can't support everyone equally. You understand, right?" I did understand. I understood that Jessica's unpaid think tank internship, which she could easily have funded with her trust fund from Grandpa, something Marcus and I weren't deemed college-ready enough to access yet, but Emma might be, was worthy of support. I understood that Marcus's football camp, which could lead to an NFL career, was an investment. I understood that my opportunity was just not a priority. "Of course, Mom. I get it." But here's the thing, I actually did get it, maybe more than she realized. I understood that in their eyes, I was the capable one, the one who would figure things out, the one who didn't need help because I was already helping myself. I understood that their love was finite and their resources were allocated based on perceived return on investment. So I thanked her, hung up, and made a decision that would change everything. I turned down the internship and instead took on extra hours at the bookstore and picked up freelance social media work for local businesses. Instead of gaining experience at someone else's company, I started learning how to build my own. I taught myself graphic design through YouTube videos, studied digital marketing through free online courses, and started treating every small business client like my ticket to something bigger. By senior year, I was managing social media accounts for 12 local businesses and had saved enough money to graduate debt-free. My grades weren't perfect, hard to maintain a 4.0 when you're working 40 hours a week, but I had something better, real-world experience and a growing network. At graduation, my parents were proud. "Look at you," Dad beamed, "supporting yourself, getting a degree. You really didn't need our help after all." Mom hugged me tight and whispered, "You've always been our independent one. We never had to worry about you." I smiled and nodded, but inside I was calculating. Jessica had graduated with honors but no practical experience, relying on family connections to land her first job at a friend of Dad's company. Marcus was struggling academically, and his football dreams were fading as he warmed the bench more than he played. Emma was still in high school, coasting on natural talent and parental indulgence. After graduation, I moved to Chicago. Not because of some grand plan, but because that's where I could afford to live while building my business. I rented a tiny studio apartment, continued freelancing, and slowly started hiring other freelancers to handle the overflow work. The calls home became less frequent. Every conversation followed the same pattern: updates about Jessica's corporate job, Marcus's attempts to walk on to various football teams, Emma's latest artistic phase, and then a perfunctory "How are you doing, Sarah?" followed by distracted listening. "I'm good, Mom. Business is growing. I hired 2 employees this month." "That's nice, honey. Did I tell you Emma got the lead in her school musical?" It stung, but it also fueled me. Every dismissed achievement, every redirected conversation, every casual assumption that I would just figure things out, it all went into the fire that kept me working until 2 a.m., pitching clients, refining processes, building something that was entirely mine. 2 years after graduation, I landed my first major corporate client, a mid-sized retailer that wanted to completely overhaul their digital presence. The contract was worth more than I had made in the previous 2 years combined. I celebrated alone in my studio apartment with Chinese takeout and started looking at office spaces. The business grew exponentially. What started as social media management evolved into full-service digital marketing. I hired a team of talented people who had been overlooked by bigger agencies, recent graduates from state schools, career changers, people who understood what it meant to prove yourself from scratch. By year 4, we had landed clients across the Midwest. By year 6, we were handling national campaigns. I moved the company to a sleek office downtown, bought a condo with actual separate rooms, and started getting invited to speak at marketing conferences. The family calls were still the same, though. Jessica had gotten married to her college boyfriend, a perfectly nice accounting manager, and was talking about kids. Marcus had finally given up on football and was working at a gym, dating a series of Instagram fitness influencers. Emma was at a small liberal arts college, majoring in art therapy and calling home twice a week to complain about her professors not understanding her vision. When I mentioned that my company had been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list, Mom's response was, "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetie. Did you see Emma's latest painting? She posted it on Facebook." I stopped expecting different. The turning point came when Emma was in her junior year of college. She called me directly, which was unusual. We had a decent relationship, but she typically communicated with me through Mom or social media comments. "Sarah?" Her voice was shaky, younger than her 20 years. "I need help." Emma explained that she had an opportunity to spend her senior year in a study abroad program in Italy, focusing on Renaissance art restoration. It was her dream program, the kind of opportunity that could set her up for a career at major museums. The problem was cost. Even with financial aid, the program would require $15,000 for living expenses, materials, and travel. "Mom and Dad can't help," she said, her voice small. "They're already paying for my regular tuition, and Dad's company is doing layoffs, so money's tight. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're doing so well with your business." I listened to my baby sister, the one who had always gotten everything handed to her, asking me for help in the same tentative tone I had used when asking for internship support. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Emma," I said carefully, "what did Mom say exactly when you asked them?" There was a pause. "She said they couldn't support everyone equally, and that you had built such a successful business, maybe you could help family now." The familiar phrase hit like a slap. The same words that had redirected my opportunities were now being used to redirect family responsibility to me. I was successful enough to solve problems, but not successful enough for acknowledgement. But here's what Mom didn't understand about the phrase "we can't support everyone equally." Emma wasn't asking as their golden child expecting automatic support. She was asking as someone who had run out of other options, and for the first time in her life, She was scared. I heard it in her voice, the same uncertainty I had felt at 20, wondering if I was worth investing in. The study abroad program represented more than just an academic opportunity for Emma. It was her first real chance to prove herself independently, away from the family dynamics that had shaped her identity. For someone who had always been praised for natural talent rather than effort, the program would require her to work harder than she ever had before, to compete with international students who had been pushing themselves academically their entire lives, to produce work that would be judged by strangers who didn't care about her potential. "Send me the program details," I told her. "Let me look at the numbers." I spent the evening reviewing the program materials Emma had sent. The curriculum was rigorous, 6 months of intensive coursework in art history, restoration techniques, and museum studies, combined with hands-on work restoring actual Renaissance frescoes in partnership with Italian museums. Students would be working alongside professional restorers, learning techniques that had been passed down for centuries, producing work that would actually be displayed in galleries and museums. It was the kind of opportunity that could genuinely transform Emma's career prospects. Graduates of the program regularly landed positions at major museums, prestigious restoration firms, and academic institutions. But it was also demanding in ways that Emma had never experienced. The program required students to work full days in restoration labs, write detailed academic papers analyzing their work, and present their findings to panels of international experts. I found myself thinking about 20-year-old Sarah, working late shifts at the coffee shop and dreaming about internships that might open doors to something bigger. I remembered the excitement of possibility mixed with the fear that I wasn't quite good enough, wasn't quite prepared enough, wasn't quite worthy of the opportunity. The difference was that Emma actually had the talent and the preparation. Her professors might be frustrating her with their academic requirements, but they were also building the foundation she would need to succeed in a program like this. Her natural artistic ability, combined with the critical thinking skills she was reluctantly developing, would serve her well in a challenging international environment. The financial details were straightforward. The program cost was significant but manageable for someone with my resources. More importantly, I saw an opportunity to do something I wished had been done for me, not just provide financial support, but create a structure that would help Emma grow from the experience. I didn't just cover Emma's study abroad costs. I hired her as a part-time social media coordinator for my company's arts and culture clients, giving her work she could do remotely from Italy. She would document her restoration work, interview fellow students from different countries, and create content that helped our clients connect with international art communities. She would earn the money she needed while building actual work experience and developing skills that would serve her beyond college. "Emma," I explained during our follow-up call, "this isn't charity. I'm offering you a job because I think you can do excellent work for our clients, and because the content you'll be creating from Italy will be valuable for our arts and culture accounts. You'll need to meet deadlines, maintain professional quality standards, and communicate regularly with our team. Are you interested in that kind of arrangement?" There was a long pause. Emma was clearly processing the difference between being given money and being given an opportunity to earn money. "You mean I'd actually be working for your company? Like, as a real employee?" "A part-time remote employee with specific responsibilities and deadlines. You'd be accountable for delivering quality work on schedule, just like any other team member. The fact that you're my sister doesn't change the professional expectations." I heard something shift in her voice, a new seriousness, maybe even excitement. For the first time, someone was offering to pay Emma not just for her potential or her artistic talent, but for her ability to produce consistent, professional quality work. "Sarah, Yes. Yes, I want to do that. I want to earn this opportunity instead of just being given it." The conversation felt like a turning point, not just for Emma's study abroad plans, but for our relationship. I was finally able to offer her something I had never received, not just financial support, but professional mentorship, the chance to prove herself in a real work environment, the experience of earning something meaningful instead of having it handed to her. The program was everything she had hoped for. Her Instagram posts from Florence showed her covered in paint and plaster dust, grinning next to restored frescoes, collaborating with international students. For the first time, I saw her working for something instead of expecting it to be given to her. The work arrangement exceeded both of our expectations. Emma's content from Italy was extraordinary, not just beautiful photographs, but thoughtful documentation of restoration techniques, interviews with master craftsmen, behind-the-scenes glimpses of museum operations that our arts and culture clients had never seen before. Her natural artistic eye combined with the professional requirements I had set created content that was both visually stunning and strategically valuable. "Sarah, you won't believe what happened today," she called me one evening, her voice crackling slightly over the international connection. "I was working on this 15th century fresco, and the lead restorer, Marco, started explaining how they use these tiny brushes made from individual hairs to clean centuries of dirt and grime. I filmed the whole process, and when I showed it to him, he said it was the best documentation of the technique he'd ever seen. Her excitement was infectious, but more importantly, it was earned. Emma was discovering the satisfaction that comes from mastering difficult skills, from meeting professional standards, from producing work that others respected not because of who she was, but because of what she had accomplished. The content she created drove significant engagement for our clients. Art museums started reaching out to us specifically because of Emma's Italy documentation. Gallery owners wanted to understand how we captured the authenticity and craftsmanship that resonated so strongly with their audiences. Emma's work became a case study in how to make traditional arts accessible and engaging for modern audiences. But the real transformation was in Emma herself. The weekly check-ins she had initially resented became conversations she looked forward to. She started asking questions about business strategy, about client relationships, about how to build sustainable creative careers. She was learning that artistic talent could be enhanced and channeled through professional discipline, that creativity and business acumen weren't mutually exclusive. "I never understood what you did before," she told me during one of our calls. "I thought business and art were opposite things. But watching how you've built relationships with these museums and galleries, how you help them connect with people who care about art, it's creative in a different way." More importantly, she started calling me directly. Not for money, but to share what she was learning, to ask advice about her projects, to complain about difficult professors in a way that showed she was actually being challenged. We developed a real relationship, separate from the family dynamics we had grown up in. When Emma returned for her senior year, she was different. More confident, more focused, and surprisingly, more aware of family dynamics she had never noticed before. "Sarah," she said during one of our regular calls, "I never realized how different Mom and Dad treated you. Being away gave me perspective, you know? You never had the support they gave Jessica and Marcus, but you built something incredible anyway." It was the first time any of my siblings had acknowledged what I had always known. It felt like validation and heartbreak all at once. The conversation continued in ways I hadn't expected. Emma started asking questions about my early business days, about the challenges I had faced, about moments when I had doubted myself. She wanted to understand not just what I had accomplished, but how I had pushed through the uncertainty and isolation of building something from nothing. "I keep thinking about that conversation you had with Mom about the internship," she said. "I was only 15 then, but I remember you being upset afterward, and I didn't understand why. Now I realize that $1,500 wasn't even that much money for them to spend on Jessica's programs or Marcus's training camps. It was just that they didn't see your opportunity as worth investing in." Her insight stung because it was so accurate. The amount itself had never been the real issue, it was the casual dismissal, the assumption that I would figure things out on my own while my siblings received active support for their ambitions. "Emma, I don't want you to feel guilty about the advantages you had," I told her. "But I'm glad you can see the pattern now. It helps me feel less crazy about my own experiences." Emma's graduation was planned for this past May. The family group chat was buzzing with excitement, Mom coordinating hotel reservations, Dad planning the celebration dinner, Jessica arranging time off work, Marcus driving up from Cincinnati where he had finally found steady work as a personal trainer. I was genuinely happy for Emma. She had lined up a job at a museum in Denver, a real position doing restoration work on their permanent collection. She had earned it through her own efforts, and I was proud of the young woman she had become. 2 weeks before graduation, Emma called with interesting news. "Sarah, you'll never guess what happened. The college called about graduation donations, and when they found out about your company, they asked if you would be interested in sponsoring something. Apparently, someone nominated me for the Outstanding Student Award in my department, and they wanted to know if you'd like to sponsor the award ceremony." This was unexpected. "What kind of sponsorship are they talking about?" "It's not huge," Emma said quickly. "They want to create a banner for the ceremony with sponsor names, and there would be a brief mention during the presentation. The donation would go towards scholarships for art students." I told them I'd ask, "But I don't want you to feel pressured just because I'm your sister." The amount they were asking for was entirely reasonable, especially given that it was going towards scholarships. But more than that, I saw an opportunity for something I hadn't even realized I wanted. "Emma, what's the exact name of the award you're nominated for?" "The Outstanding Achievement in Art Therapy Award. It's given to one graduating senior who has demonstrated excellence in academic work and practical application." Honestly, I never expected to be in the running. I made the donation that afternoon, but I also made a few additional requests. I wanted to fund not just the banner, but the establishment of an ongoing scholarship specifically for students who demonstrated resilience and self-reliance in pursuing their artistic goals. Students who had worked their way through college, who had overcome obstacles without family financial support, who had built something meaningful from nothing. The college was thrilled to accommodate. They worked with me to set up the scholarship fund and agreed to my request that the announcement be made during graduation. Emma knew about the general donation but not about the scholarship or the specific terms. Graduation day was perfect, sunny and warm, the kind of spring weather that makes everyone optimistic. I drove up from Chicago the night before and met the family for dinner. It was the first time we had all been together in over a year. Mom was in full celebration mode, showing photos of Emma's art to the waiter, planning the next day's logistics with military precision. Dad was proud and slightly overwhelmed by the college campus, making jokes about how much tuition costs these days. Jessica looked tired but happy, taking a break from her own life to celebrate her baby sister. Marcus was surprisingly thoughtful, asking Emma real questions about her career plans. And they were all genuinely warm to me. Mom hugged me tight and said how proud she was of my success, how glad she was that I could be there. Dad asked detailed questions about my business, actually listening to the answers. Jessica wanted advice about social media marketing for her husband's new consulting practice. It was the family dynamic I had always wanted, and it only took me building a multi-million-dollar company to earn it. The graduation ceremony was held in the college's main quadrangle, with families arranged in folding chairs facing a small stage. The college had done a beautiful job with decorations, banners representing different departments, flower arrangements, a professional sound system that could actually be heard in the back rows. I spotted my banner immediately. It was positioned prominently behind the stage, the Sarah Martinez Resilience and Art Scholarship, supporting students who build their own path. Mom noticed it at the same time I did. She grabbed Dad's arm and pointed, her face confused. "Robert, look at that banner. Is that Sarah's name?" Dad fumbled for his reading glasses, squinted at the stage. "Sarah Martinez. That's our Sarah, isn't it? What's that about?" I had been wondering how to handle this moment, how much to explain, whether to make it a big deal or let them figure it out gradually. But seeing their faces, seeing the genuine surprise and dawning understanding, I realized I didn't need to do anything. The banner spoke for itself. The ceremony began with the usual pageantry, processional music, welcome remarks from the dean, recognition of faculty. Emma looked beautiful in her cap and gown, sitting with her fellow art therapy graduates in the front section. When they reached the awards portion of the ceremony, the department chair took the microphone. "Our final award today is particularly special, as it represents not just academic achievement, but the kind of resilience and creativity that defines the best of our graduates. The Outstanding Achievement in Art Therapy Award is sponsored this year through the generosity of alumna family member Sarah Martinez, whose own journey exemplifies the self-reliance and innovation we hope to foster in our students." I felt Mom's sharp intake of breath beside me. "But we're also pleased to announce that Ms. Martinez has established an ongoing scholarship fund, the Sarah Martinez Resilience and Art Scholarship, specifically designed to support students who have demonstrated exceptional self-reliance in pursuing their educational and artistic goals. This scholarship will provide annual support to students who have worked their way through college, who have overcome significant obstacles, and who have built meaningful accomplishments through their own determination." The dean joined the department chair on stage, holding a plaque and an oversized ceremonial check representing the scholarship fund. The first recipient of the Outstanding Achievement in Art Therapy Award, and the inaugural recipient of this scholarship, is graduating senior Emma Martinez, whose own journey through our program has been marked by exactly the kind of resilience and growth we hope to celebrate. Emma's face, even from our distance in the audience, showed complete shock. She clearly hadn't known about the scholarship or that she would be the first recipient. As she walked to the stage, she looked back toward our section of the audience, her eyes finding mine. The dean continued, "Emma Martinez exemplified resilience when she independently secured and funded her study abroad experience in Italy, working throughout the program to support herself while conducting advanced restoration work on Renaissance frescoes. She demonstrated innovation in her senior thesis project, which addresses art therapy applications for trauma survivors. And she has shown the kind of self-reliance that builds character and creates leaders." I watched Emma accept the award, saw her scanning the audience until she found me again. When our eyes met, she mouthed "thank you," and I felt something shift in my chest. This was what validation felt like. Not from parents who had finally noticed my success, but from being able to recognize and support someone else's journey. But I also watched Mom's face throughout the presentation. The initial surprise had transformed into something more complex, recognition, confusion, and what I was pretty sure was shame. She kept glancing at me, then back at the banner, then at Emma on stage. When the ceremony ended and we were all standing for the recessional, Mom grabbed my arm. Sarah, she said, her voice tight with emotion, I don't understand. When did you? How did you? She gestured helplessly toward the stage. I made a donation to support Emma's award, I said simply. And I thought it would be nice to help other students who are building their own path. But the scholarship? That banner. That's a significant commitment. Dad had joined us, still looking stunned. It's something I wanted to do. Emma had broken away from her fellow graduates and was pushing through the crowd toward us, still in her cap and gown, holding her award plaque. Sarah. She reached me and threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me over. I can't believe you did this. I had no idea about the scholarship, about any of it. You earned it, I told her, hugging her back. Every bit of it. Over Emma's shoulder, I watched Mom's face crumble. She was crying, not happy tears, but something deeper and more complicated. Dad had his arm around her, looking lost. The family celebration dinner that night was unlike anything we had ever experienced together. The restaurant was nice, Dad had made reservations at the kind of place we went for milestone occasions. But the conversation was different. Emma was radiant, still processing the day's events, telling everyone about her upcoming job in Denver, about the project she wanted to work on, about how the scholarship would help other students like her. She kept looking at me with something like awe, which was uncomfortable but also deeply satisfying. Jessica was asking me serious questions about business growth, about building client relationships, about managing employees. She had never shown that kind of interest in my work before. Marcus was quieter than usual, but in a thoughtful way. At one point, when the conversation had moved to other topics, he leaned over to me. You know, I never really understood what you did, he said quietly. I mean, I knew you had a business, but I didn't get how big it was, how important. That banner today. That was really something. But Mom was struggling. She kept starting conversations and then trailing off, kept looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, when Emma and Jessica had gone to the bathroom and Dad and Marcus were debating baseball statistics, she leaned close to me. Sarah, I need to say something, and I don't know how to say it right. I waited. That day when you called about the internship, when you needed $1,500. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I thought about that conversation so many times over the years. I told you we couldn't support everyone equally, and I thought I was being practical, responsible. But today, seeing that banner, seeing what you've built. She stopped, took a shaky breath. I realize I didn't treat you equally. I treated you like you didn't need our support because you were capable of handling things on your own. But needing support and being capable aren't mutually exclusive, are they? You needed us, and we failed you. I failed you. This was the conversation I had imagined having countless times over the years. In my fantasies, it felt triumphant. In reality, it just felt sad. Mom, I said carefully, I turned out okay. You turned out better than okay. You turned out extraordinary. But not because we didn't support you, in spite of it. And that's not something to celebrate about our parenting. She was right, and we both knew it. But I also knew that this realization, this conversation, wouldn't change the past. The nights I worked extra shifts while my siblings got family-funded opportunities were still part of my story. The self-reliance that had felt like abandonment at 20 felt like strength at 28. I learned things from doing it on my own, I told her. I learned that I could build something meaningful, that I could create opportunities instead of waiting for them. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. You shouldn't have had to learn those things alone. She was crying again, and I found myself comforting her, which felt strange and familiar at the same time. This was our dynamic. I took care of things, I made things okay, I managed emotions and logistics and problems. But this time felt different, because I was choosing it. I wasn't comforting her because I had to, because it was expected, because I was the responsible one. I was doing it because she was genuinely grappling with something difficult, and because I had the emotional capacity to help. Mom, I'm not angry, I said, and realized it was true. I was hurt for a long time, and I was determined to prove something. But I'm not angry anymore. I built something I'm proud of, and I got to help Emma today in a way that felt really meaningful. That doesn't erase what happened, but it doesn't have to define our relationship going forward. The drive back to Chicago the next day gave me time to process everything. The weekend had been emotionally exhausting and surprisingly healing. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like my family saw me, not just as the capable one who would figure things out, but as someone who had built something worth recognizing. But more than that, I felt like I had closed a loop. The scholarship wasn't just about helping other students, though that mattered enormously. It was about taking the experience that had shaped me, being overlooked, being underestimated, being forced to build my own path, and turning it into something generative. Emma called me a week later with an update. She had been contacted by 3 other students who were interested in applying for the scholarship for the following year. One was a single mother finishing her degree in art education while working full-time. Another was a first-generation college student who had been supporting younger siblings throughout school. The third was a veteran using GI Bill benefits but struggling with additional costs for art supplies and portfolio development. Sarah, these students. Their stories are incredible. I never realized how many people are doing what you did, building their own opportunities when support isn't available. There are a lot of us, I told her. More than people realize. The scholarship committee wants to know if you'd be interested in being involved in the selection process. Not making the final decisions, but maybe meeting with finalists, offering mentorship as part of the award. I thought about 20-year-old Sarah, working late shifts and studying for exams, wondering if anyone would ever see her potential. The chance to be the person who saw and supported someone else's potential felt like completing a circle. I'd like that very much. The business continues to grow. We opened a second office in Milwaukee last month, and we're considering expansion into the Twin Cities market. The work is challenging and rewarding, and I've built a team of people who understand what it means to create something meaningful from scratch. The family dynamics are still evolving. Mom calls more often now, asking about work but also just checking in. Dad has become genuinely interested in the business, occasionally sending me articles about marketing trends he thinks might be relevant. Jessica and I are collaborating on social media strategy for her husband's business. Marcus is applying to programs to become a certified personal trainer, funding it himself but asking for advice about building a client base. And Emma is thriving in Denver. She sends photos from the museum, updates about restoration projects, stories about the city and her new colleagues. She's building her own path now with confidence and self-reliance, but also with the knowledge that support exists when she needs it. The banner from graduation is stored in my office now. The college sent it to me as a keepsake, along with photos from the ceremony and updates about the scholarship fund. It's a reminder of something I never expected to want, recognition not for needing less, but for building more. Sometimes I think about that $1,500, about what might have happened if I had gotten the internship, if I had followed a more traditional path into corporate marketing, if I had been one of the supported rather than one of the supporters. I might have been successful in a different way, but I wouldn't have learned the same lessons about resilience, about creating opportunities, about the satisfaction of building something entirely your own. I wouldn't change it. The hurt was real, and the struggle was difficult, but the strength was earned. And now that strength can support others who are building their own extraordinary paths. The banner reads, The Sarah Martinez Resilience and Art Scholarship, supporting students who build their own path. But what it really says is, you are seen, you are valued, and your determination matters. Sometimes that's all someone needs to build something incredible. And sometimes, that recognition comes from the person who needed it most when they were 20 years old, working late shifts and wondering if anyone would ever notice what they were capable of becoming.